It was a freezing winter evening, and little Emily walked hand in hand with her mother through the bustling city streets. Christmas lights twinkled overhead, but the cold air bit at her cheeks. As they passed a quiet corner near the bakery, Emily noticed a woman sitting on the sidewalk, wrapped in nothing but an old, tattered coat. The woman's hands trembled as she clutched a small cardboard sign that read, ***, anything helps. ***. Emily's heart tightened. She had seen homeless people before, but this woman looked especially cold, her face weary, and her eyes filled with a sadness Emily couldn't ignore. Without a second thought, Emily unwrapped her favorite scarf, a bright red one her grandmother had knitted for her, and stepped toward the woman. "Here," she said softly, draping the scarf around the woman's shoulders. "It'll keep you warm." The woman's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment she just stared at Emily. Then a tear slipped down her cheek. "Thank you, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice cracking. Emily smiled and hurried back to her mother, who watched the exchange with quiet admiration. That night, as Emily lay in bed, she felt warm inside, not because of the blankets, but because of what she had done. She had no idea that her small act of kindness would change everything. The next morning, as the family sat down for breakfast, a loud knock echoed through their home. Emily's father exchanged a confused glance with her mother before heading to the door. When he opened it, 2 police officers stood on the porch, their expressions serious. "Mr. and Mrs. Carter," one of them asked. Emily's mother nodded, concern flickering in her eyes. "Yes, officers. Is something wrong?" The officer took a deep breath. "We need to talk about something that happened last night. It's about your daughter." Emily froze, her heart pounding. What could this possibly be about? And that's when everything changed. Emily's parents exchanged uneasy glances before stepping aside to let the officers in. Emily sat frozen at the kitchen table, her small hands gripping her glass of orange juice. She had never been in trouble before. What could they possibly want with her? The taller officer knelt to her level, his face kind but serious. "Emily, sweetheart, do you remember giving your scarf to a woman last night?" he asked gently. Emily nodded slowly. "Yes." She looked really cold. "I just wanted to help." The officers exchanged a look before the second one spoke. "That was very kind of you, Emily. But we need to ask, did she say anything to you? Did she seem afraid?" Emily frowned, trying to remember. She just said thank you, and she looked sad. Her mother placed a protective hand on Emily's shoulder. "Officers, what is this about? Did something happen to that woman?" The first officer sighed. "We're not entirely sure yet, but something unusual happened last night. A few hours after Emily gave her the scarf, the woman was seen leaving that spot in a hurry. A security camera caught her running down the street like she was scared of something. Then she disappeared." Emily's father crossed his arms. "Disappeared? What do you mean?" The second officer glanced at his notepad. "No one has seen her since. It's like she vanished. But here's the strange part. When the footage was reviewed, something caught our attention. Just before she ran off, she was holding the scarf. And inside it, she had tucked something small, something important." Emily's breath caught in her throat. "What was it?" The officer hesitated. "That's what we're trying to find out. Whatever it was, she seemed to be protecting it. And now we think someone might have been looking for her." A chill ran through the room. Emily's mother tightened her grip on her daughter's shoulders, while her father's expression hardened. The officer stood. "We need to ask you some more questions, because whatever happened last night, your daughter may be the last person who saw that woman before she vanished." Emily's heart pounded as she looked at the officers. She had only wanted to help, but now it felt like she had stepped into something much bigger than she understood. Her mother pulled out a chair and gestured for everyone to sit, though tension still filled the room. The taller officer cleared his throat. "We need to go over last night, step by step. Anything you remember could help." Emily took a deep breath. "I just saw her sitting there. She looked cold and sad. I gave her my scarf, and she smiled a little. Then she just sat there holding it. That's all. The officer scribbled in his notebook. You said she didn't say much. But was there anyone else around? Did she look nervous before you walked up to her? Emily thought for a moment. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. But maybe. She scrunched her face, trying to remember. I think she looked over her shoulder once, but I thought she was just looking at people walking by. Her father's voice was low and firm. What exactly was inside that scarf? The second officer sighed. We don't know for sure, but the way she held it, it was like she knew it was important. Maybe it was something she had before Emily gave her the scarf, or maybe she tucked something inside after. Either way, she was protecting it. Emily's mother shook her head. And now she's missing. The officer nodded. Yes, and there's something else. He slid a small, clear evidence bag onto the table. Inside was a piece of crumpled paper, slightly torn at the edges. This was found a few blocks from where she was last seen. It was tucked into the scarf. Emily's eyes widened. The paper had shaky handwriting, barely legible. But one thing stood out, an address. Her father picked up the bag and stared at the address for a long moment. This is our neighborhood. Emily's mother's voice trembled. Do you think she was trying to send us a message? The officers exchanged glances. That's what we're trying to figure out. But if she was in danger, whoever she was running from might already know where she was going. A heavy silence filled the room. Outside, a car passed slowly, its tires crunching against the icy road. Emily suddenly felt colder than she had the night before. Something was wrong, and it wasn't over yet. The room felt colder despite the heater humming softly in the background. Emily's father set the evidence bag down, his fingers still gripping the edge as if holding onto something unseen. Outside, the wind howled through the bare tree branches, rattling against the windows like quiet knocks. The taller officer leaned forward. We need to check this address. If she was trying to reach someone here, we need to know why. And if she was being followed. He let the sentence hang in the air, the unfinished thought making Emily's stomach twist. Her mother pulled Emily close. Is our family in danger? The officers exchanged another look. Right now, we're just trying to piece everything together, but we need to act fast. Emily's father stood abruptly, grabbing his coat. I'm coming with you. Sir, we can't allow that, the second officer said firmly. We don't know what we're walking into. Emily watched as her father clenched his jaw. He wasn't the type to sit back and do nothing. But before he could argue, a sharp noise cut through the air, a car door slamming shut just outside. Everyone froze. Emily's mother tightened her grip on her daughter's shoulders. The officers moved quickly, one glancing out the window while the other reached for his radio. There's a car parked across the street, the first officer whispered. Black sedan, tinted windows. Emily felt her heart hammer against her chest. Do you think it's them? The officer didn't answer right away. He tapped his radio, murmuring something into it before looking at the family. Lock the doors, stay away from the windows. Emily's mother moved fast, pulling Emily into the hallway as her father turned off the lights. Shadows stretched across the walls, the faint glow from the streetlights casting long shapes over the hardwood floor. Then, another knock, not at their front door, but at the back. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The officers moved quickly, one stepping toward the kitchen, the other drawing his flashlight. The knock came again, this time softer, almost desperate. A woman's voice, barely a whisper, broke through the silence. Please, help me. Emily's mother's eyes widened. It's her, she breathed. But before anyone could move, the doorknob rattled, and then footsteps. Heavy, not hers. Someone else was out there. Emily's mother clutched her hand, her grip tight with fear. The house was silent except for the sound of the wind outside and the soft, frantic breaths of everyone inside. The officers exchanged glances before the taller one motioned for silence. He moved carefully toward the back door, his hand hovering over his holster, while the other officer positioned himself near the front. The woman outside knocked again, weaker this time. "Please," she whispered, "they're coming." Emily felt her heart hammer against her ribs. She knew that voice. It was the same woman she had given her scarf to, the woman who had disappeared. But before anyone could respond, the sound of heavy footsteps from the side of the house sent a jolt of terror through the room. They weren't alone. The officer at the back peered through the small window near the door, his body tensed. "She's alone," he whispered. Then, glancing at the other officer, he nodded. "Cover me." In one swift motion, he unlocked the door and pulled the woman inside. She stumbled forward, her face pale, her clothes damp with melting snow. The scarf was still wrapped around her neck, but now it was torn, as if someone had grabbed at it. Her eyes were wide with fear. "We have to go," she gasped. "Now, they know." A loud bang cut her off. The front door shook as something heavy slammed against it. Emily's mother stifled a gasp, pulling Emily back. The second officer quickly locked the back door and signaled for everyone to move. "Get to the basement." But the woman shook her head violently. "No, no basement. They'll trap us. We have to get out, through the side door before they—" Another bang. This time louder. The front door knob twisted. Emily's father grabbed his phone, his voice low but urgent. "We need backup. Now." The woman turned to Emily, her hands trembling. "I didn't mean to bring this here," she whispered. "But I had no choice. You need to know the truth before it's too late." Emily stared at her, her chest tightening. What truth? The woman opened her mouth to speak, and then, all at once, the front door burst open. The front door crashed open, slamming against the wall. A rush of cold air flooded the house, sending a shiver down Emily's spine. Her mother pulled her close, shielding her as the officers raised their weapons. The woman gasped and staggered backward, her wide eyes locked on the shadowy figure stepping into the doorway. A man stood there, his face hidden beneath a hood, his heavy boots leaving wet prints on the floor. His breath was slow and steady, but his hands were clenched into fists. He didn't move right away. Instead, his gaze swept across the room, landing on the woman. "You took something from me," he said, his voice low and calm, but laced with something dangerous. The woman clutched the scarf around her neck. "I had no choice," she whispered. "It doesn't belong to you." The man took a slow step forward. The officers shouted warnings, but he didn't stop. He reached into his pocket, and for a split second, everyone tensed. But instead of a weapon, he pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. He held it up. "You left this behind." The woman's breath hitched. Emily's father took a careful step forward. "What is that?" The man's jaw tightened. "The truth." The woman hesitated, then reached out with shaking hands. As soon as she unfolded the paper, her face crumbled. Tears welled in her eyes. "It's real?" she whispered. The man gave a slow nod. "I've been trying to find you. Not to hurt you, to help you." Emily watched in confusion as the woman pressed the paper to her chest. "I thought," her voice broke, "I thought I was running from you." The man's eyes softened. "No, you were running from the wrong people." A sudden wail of sirens filled the air. Flashing red and blue lights poured through the windows. The officers quickly moved to secure the scene, but the man just stood there, hands raised in surrender. Emily's father picked up the paper and read it silently. His face paled. He looked at the woman, then at the man, then finally at Emily. And that's when he said the words that changed everything. "Emily, this was about you all along." Emily's breath caught in her throat. Asterisk asterisk about her, asterisk asterisk. She looked up at her father, searching his face for answers. But he was still staring at the paper, his hands trembling. The woman wiped her tears, taking a shaky breath before turning to Emily. "I never meant to put you in danger," she whispered, "but I couldn't leave without making sure you were safe." Emily's mother pulled her closer. "What does this mean? Why, Emily?" The man lowered his hands as the officers moved in cautiously. Because she was the only one who helped, he said. The scarf, it wasn't just a scarf. Inside, she wrapped something without knowing it. Something people would do anything to keep hidden. Emily's mind spun. She just wanted to help a woman in the cold. That was all. But now, standing in her own home, surrounded by officers, she realized that one small act of kindness had unraveled something much bigger. Her father finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. This document, it proves something powerful, and people didn't want it to get out. The woman nodded. I was supposed to deliver it, but I was being followed, so I hid it inside the scarf. I never expected a little girl to be the one who found me. She smiled softly at Emily. But maybe that was the only way it could have worked. No one thought to look at a child's kindness. Outside, more officers arrived, securing the house, the street, everything. The man, the woman, both were taken for questioning, though not as criminals. As people caught in something far bigger than themselves. Emily stood between her parents, watching as the night slowly returned to quiet. The scarf, torn and worn, still hung around the woman's shoulders, and as she was led away, she turned back one last time, mouthing 2 words. Thank you. Emily didn't understand everything that had happened that night, but she knew one thing for sure. One small act of kindness had changed everything.